Imagine this. What if the chilling kills of Dexter Morgan, everyone's favorite vigilante serial killer, aren't just about justice? What if they reveal something far more terrifying about him, and maybe even about us? Let's delve deeper into the layers of Dexter Morgan, a character who both fascinates and unnerves us. At first glance, he seems to perfectly balance the roles of hero and anti-hero. By day, he's a respected blood-spatter analyst working for the Miami police. But when night falls, he transforms into a ruthless vigilante serial killer. Yet, beneath this duality lies a far more complex and unsettling story. Dexter lives by a strict set of rules known as Harry's Code, carefully crafted by his adoptive father, Harry. This code acts as a moral compass, channeling his deeply ingrained urge to kill toward other killers. On the surface, this might seem almost noble, a form of righteous balance in a chaotic world. But upon closer examination, the darker truth becomes evident. This code is not about justice, it's about control. Harry's Code isn't merely a guide, it's a straitjacket, a carefully constructed cage designed to keep Dexter's darkness contained, ensuring that his obsessive urge to kill doesn't spiral out of control. But what if that cage isn't as secure as it seems? What if Dexter, despite his seemingly heroic actions, is still fundamentally a monster, constantly searching for an excuse to kill? This is where it becomes truly terrifying. Dexter doesn't just use the code to kill, he uses it to rationalize his own nature. His victims are rarely random. They often reflect something deeper: his own fears, his insecurities, his hidden demons. Each kill isn't merely an act of vengeance or justice, it's an attempt to confront himself and come to terms with what he truly is. And that brings us to the most unsettling question of all. Is Dexter a hero in disguise, or is he a wolf in sheep's clothing? His code may appear to keep him in check, but with every kill, it reveals more and more of the darkness that lurks within him. Perhaps the most terrifying thing about Dexter is that, despite his facade of control, he serves as a reflection of our own struggle with the boundaries of good and evil. Let's unravel the deeper patterns hidden in Dexter's kills, because behind each act lies a shadow of his own soul. From his brother Brian Moser, also known as the Ice Truck Killer, to the terrifying Trinity Killer, each victim is far more than just a criminal. They are reflections of Dexter's inner struggle, a mirror forcing him to confront the darkest corners of his psyche. Take Brian Moser, for example. Brian wasn't just another adversary. He was family, a blood connection that upended the foundations of Dexter's existence. Brian was the only one who truly understood Dexter's darkness, and more importantly, he embraced it without guilt or shame. He embodied the freedom to fully accept that dark side, a freedom Dexter never dared to take. When Dexter killed Brian, it wasn't just a decision to follow Harry's code. It was a symbolic act. He chose the structure and control of Harry's rules over the chaos Brian represented. But was it an act of victory or fear? Fear of losing control and giving in to what he truly is deep down? Then there's the Trinity Killer, perhaps Dexter's most iconic and chilling adversary. Trinity wasn't just an ordinary target. He was a reflection of a possible future. In Trinity, Dexter saw a man completely consumed by his dark desires, yet still managing to maintain a facade of normality. Trinity's double life showed Dexter just how thin the line is between control and total surrender to evil. Every confrontation with Trinity forced Dexter to face a horrifying question. Is he truly the master of his darkness, or is he just one misstep away from complete destruction? What makes this all the more terrifying are the small yet telling moments in Dexter's hunts. Have you ever noticed how he sometimes hesitates when his victims beg for mercy? Those few seconds of doubt, when his mask of control starts to crack. But ultimately, his dark passenger takes over. And in that moment of surrender, Dexter reveals just how deep his inner conflict truly runs. Those fleeting moments of hesitation might be even more terrifying than the murders themselves, because they reveal that even Dexter isn't sure who or what he really is. And so, his victims aren't just instruments of justice. They become a haunting series of self-portraits. Each one reveals a part of Dexter he tries to hide from himself. And in doing so, they show us, the audience, something we might not want to see. The terrifying truth that the line between good and evil is far blurrier than we'd like to believe. Which of Dexter's kills do you think was the most shocking and a true turning point in his story? Was it a moment of control or a glimpse of chaos? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's dive deeper into the infamous dark passenger, the mysterious force Dexter frequently references. He describes it as an uncontrollable entity, a dark shadow that compels him to kill. But what if the dark passenger isn't a separate force at all? What if it's nothing more than Dexter himself, stripped of all facades and excuses? For Dexter, the dark passenger serves as a shield, a way to distance himself from his own actions. It's not him committing these murders. It's the passenger, an external force driving him. But here's the sinister truth. That separation doesn't exist. As the series progresses, it becomes increasingly clear that this passenger is nothing more than a construct, an illusion Dexter uses to protect himself from the horrifying reality of his own nature. And the more he tries to control this illusion, the more his darkness consumes him. Think about the moments when Dexter struggles to keep his emotions in check, when the lines between him and his dark passenger begin to blur. These raw, unfiltered moments of truth are the most disturbing of all, because if the passenger is just an excuse, what does that say about Dexter? Perhaps the most chilling aspect of his story isn't the murders themselves, but the thought that Dexter isn't the victim of an external force. He is that force. He is the darkness. And this brings us to an uncomfortable question we must ask ourselves. Is Dexter truly any different from the monsters he hunts? Or is he simply better at hiding his true nature, both from others and from himself? His dark passenger might seem like a psychological explanation, but ultimately it could be nothing more than a clever lie, a tool he uses to absolve himself of guilt and responsibility. Dexter Morgan is many things: a brilliant forensic analyst, a ruthless serial killer, and a man caught in a constant battle with his own darkness. But perhaps the most surprising and simultaneously terrifying aspect of his character is his capacity for love, especially when it comes to his family. While Dexter claims to be emotionally numb, his actions tell a different, far more complex story. His love for Rita, Deborah, and Harrison is undeniable, but it is also deeply intertwined with the same darkness that defines his life. Take his relationship with Rita, for instance. What begins as a convenient facade, a way to appear normal, evolves into something much deeper. Rita becomes more than just a cover. She becomes a symbol of a life Dexter knows he can never truly have, a glimmer of hope that makes him feel more human. But this love is not without danger. While Rita brings Dexter closer to his humanity, she also exposes the vulnerability he so desperately tries to conceal. And ultimately, this vulnerability proves fatal for her. Her death isn't just a tragedy. It's a chilling reminder of how destructive Dexter's life truly is. And then there's Harrison, Dexter's son, his most cherished connection, and perhaps his greatest fear. Harrison represents everything Dexter wants to protect: innocence, hope, a future untainted by the darkness that consumed him. But herein lies the tragedy. In his attempt to shield Harrison, to break the cycle of violence and trauma, Dexter fails. He cannot contain his own darkness, and instead, he watches as it begins to seep into his son. In Dexter, New Blood, we see that Harrison inherits more than just Dexter's genes. He inherits his trauma, his inner turmoil, and possibly even his dark tendencies. The moments when Harrison expresses his anger and confusion, those fleeting glimpses of darkness in his eyes, paint a haunting picture. A child teetering on the same edge as his father. And as viewers, we're left to wonder, was Dexter ever capable of being the father Harrison needed? Or was his love always destined to be destructive? What makes all of this even grimmer is how love in Dexter's life serves as a double-edged sword. Love makes him more human, yes, but it also reveals his weaknesses and repeatedly pulls him closer to the brink. His inability to reconcile his two natures, the loving father and the remorseless killer, leads not only to his own downfall, but also drags those closest to him into his darkness. If there's one thing that defines Dexter's life, it's blood. It's the foundation of his career as a forensic expert and the calling card of his kills. But blood is more than just a physical presence in Dexter's world. It's a symbol of everything he can't escape. Let's start with the most defining moment of Dexter's life, the shipping container scene. Witnessing his mother's murder left him surrounded by blood, a moment that permanently etched itself into his psyche. From that day forward, blood became a reminder of both his trauma and his survival. It's no coincidence that Dexter's job revolves around analyzing blood spatter. In many ways, it's his attempt to control the very thing that once left him powerless. Blood also represents Dexter's duality. On one hand, it's a scientific puzzle he can solve, a way to impose order on chaos. On the other hand, it's the aftermath of his own chaos, the evidence of the destruction he brings. This duality mirrors Dexter's internal struggle, his need for control versus his inability to truly escape his own nature. But here's the terrifying part. Blood doesn't just symbolize Dexter's past, it foreshadows his future. No matter how hard he tries to separate himself from his darkness, blood always brings him back. It's a constant reminder that his destiny is tied to violence, whether he wants it or not. Let's shift our focus from Dexter to us, the audience. Why are we so drawn to characters like Dexter? Why do we root for a man who takes justice into his own hands, breaking every moral and legal boundary in the process? The answer lies in society's complicated relationship with justice. In a perfect world, the justice system would work flawlessly. Criminals would be caught, victims would find closure, and the guilty would face consequences. But, as we all know, the real world is far from perfect. Enter Dexter, a man who steps in where the system fails. He's not just a character, he's a fantasy. He represents our desire for fairness, even if it comes at a moral cost. Unlike other vigilantes, Dexter operates in a much grayer area. Batman fights crime to protect Gotham. The Punisher seeks vengeance for his family. But Dexter? He's driven by his own darkness, using justice as a justification for his actions. This makes him both relatable and unsettling. On one hand, we admire his ability to take action. On the other hand, we're forced to confront the fact that his actions are, at their core, selfish. But here's the deeper question. By cheering for Dexter, are we endorsing his behavior? Are we complicit in his crimes? And if we are, what does that say about us as a society? Are we so desperate for justice that we're willing to overlook the cost? Ultimately, Dexter's story isn't just about him, it's about us. It's a mirror that forces us to examine our own beliefs about morality, justice, and the lengths we're willing to go to for what we believe is right. If you found this deep dive into Dexter's world fascinating, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel,